Hey everybody, welcome back to Physical Therapy Private Practice Secrets of the Top 10%. My name is Brian Gallagher. I'm your host. And this week I got a special treat for you. We are going to talk real life application, real life experience, real life execution of some of the most challenging of all topics today in physical therapy, and that is recruiting, hiring, and retention. So we've been putting a great emphasis on that lately, and there's nothing better than to actually share the experience of somebody who's applying the technology, applying the strategies and processes that we have been educating thousands of owners on across the nation over this past couple of years. And I have with me Jason Waz, and I'm going to let him introduce himself regarding his clinic and what he's currently doing in life. He is constantly growing and expanding across the nation in everything he's doing in physical therapy and in technology. But today, after you hear all of that, we're going to boil it down to physical therapy, private practice ownership, and how you can actually excel and succeed in hiring, retention, and recruitment. So, Jason.
Thanks for having me again. Well, this is one podcast that we're actually not going to be talking about the newbie, which people see my name like, oh, more newbie stuff, which is either good or bad. But, you've been for context, you've been my coach, my mentor. I've been with you and Meg since I think 2017. And so I started seeing all these topics pop up on the Meg Slack channel and hearing it on podcasts. And we'll talk a little bit about the newbie and how that's afforded me the opportunity to work with hundreds of other practices across the country. And the one pain point that I see and that I hear keep coming up all over the country is in staffing and hiring and having a staffing shortage and being able to keep and maintain good employees. And I thought, like, a lot of the things that MEG Academy has taught me over the years actually plays into being able to hire, attract, and retain not only a therapist, but quality therapists. Yeah. And so, I reached out to you and thought, what tools and what, things can I add maybe that might be of value to your audience that might help them with, staffing, because my practice, CEP, physical therapy in Tampa, Florida, we've been around since 2007, and we've never, ever had an issue with attracting, hiring, or retaining qualified physical therapists. And that's not to be like, come on a podcast and boast like, haha, I don't have a problem, everybody else does. But so I started just over the past couple of weeks looking at, assessing my own practice and why is that.
And Jason, let me just interject there, because I think a lot of people who hear that, it's definitely not a boasting point. You're just stating the facts, right? You're just stating the facts of what your experience has been. And then people will automatically think, well, you must be in the hub of a ton of therapists looking for work, or you must be on the back doorstep of a ton of PT schools, or maybe you have no competition in your area. None of that could be further from the truth. You don't have, like in Buffalo, New York, upstate, where there's like 8 PT school programs all within a stone throw. You don't have that where you are, and you have immense competition. Everyone's in Florida.
Yeah. And I have a lot of colleagues around me that aren't necessarily part of MEG Academy, or they don't have a plan.
Right.
They also have challenges with hiring. I don't. So it's not necessarily the geographic area, but it goes along with the common thing where if you get a coach, or if you have a mentor, or if you listen to books and podcasts, you can't just like read it, listen to it, and expect it to work through osmosis. You're going to wake up one day, and you have to be motivated. You have to be dedicated. You have to be invested in putting out a product to be able to hire. And you also have to be intentional with what you do and what you put out there. Like, I'll just give you an example. We had 2 positions opening. And since I started working with Meg and added the newbie and did some other things in 2017, our practice has exploded. And we went from myself and 1 other therapist. Now we have 8 clinicians. And every single clinician is a clinical instructor. So one of the points that I want to talk about today is for the practices that don't have a robust or even a starter clinical education program, that is absolutely going to be your best feeder system. The practices I talk to, most of them that don't have a clinical education program in their practice, it's because they think it's going to be more work, or the therapist is in their whirlwind, They're a good producer, but they're not a good manager and they're not a good leader because they haven't gone through the intentional training that I went through with MEG Academy. So it really just starts with having a really good clinical education program. And the clinics, even around me in the Tampa, Florida area, they don't have a big clinical education program. And one of the things that I kind of
And define for the audience what you would consider a very good, well thought out, put into place clinical education program. Give us an example of that.
So every one of my clinicians, after they get through the first year, whatever the requirement is, they're a certified clinical instructor. So that just comes with part of the job. But I think that's also
what do they have to do to become certified? I'm sorry to interrupt.
There's an APTA course. I believe it's a year. They may have shortened that because of the need in clinical education and academic education programs, but I believe it's still a year. You have to be out for a year, and then you have to take a APTA certification course as a clinical instructor. So, and then you could be a CI for a student. So every one of my clinicians is that, but that's part of the bigger picture. I think when they come in and they get hired, they want to have room for growth, whether it's they want to be a clinical educator, they want to go from a producer to a manager to a leader. I mean, we always outline when we interview people that they have that opportunity for growth.
They're looking at, this is part of it, right? This is the behind the scenes part. They're looking for an employment ladder. Like, don't hire me and let a snapshot of me today look the same 5 years from now. Where can I grow, flourish, prosper, and expand both personally and professionally inside this practice? And you just put it on automatic that on your 1 year anniversary, you're going to go and attend the CI course and you're going to pass the test and you're going to become a certified clinical instructor. That is just part of the employment in your practice. And I think that's what all of you guys need to take away from this. This isn't like an option. This is like how the culture is developed inside Jason's practice, what makes it a differentiator from his competitors.
Yeah. And so we have 8 clinicians, really 7, because I'm not in the clinic anymore. And so we, in 2 locations, we train, teach, and mentor 12 to 15 DPT students or PTA students a year.
Wow.
So that's what I call robust, but we really perfected it to where we have a virtual training platform, which you say everybody needs to have. That's what you're still calling it, right? So 2 weeks before these students come on board, they go all of our training, whether it be newbie, heart rate variability, all the technology that we utilize, which also attracts many of them. They go through that virtually and they pass virtual quizzes, things that we have our brand new hires also do, but interns do the same thing. Clinical, interns do that before they come on. With a really good clinical education program too, I highly recommend that you always interview. Schools don't require interviews for clinical education. They basically want to put students wherever they can because it's really tough for them to find spots. So because we interview and because of our reputation and because of our business model and because of the technology and all the stuff that we've built over the years, there's actually a waiting list of the top students in each program that want to interview to get a clinical education opportunity with us. And you always want to know who you're getting before they come instead of just saying, send me whoever. And so that's a big part of it, a little.
Yeah. And doesn't, not to cut you off, but doesn't that fall in a line with when somebody's giving you something for free, it greatly diminishes in value versus something that you have to work for or something you have to pay for, so I recommend to all of you guys listening out there is have some integrity, show some character, some professional withdrawal, so to speak. When it's a given to come and be a student in your clinic, the level of appreciation and the level of tenacity and respect and follow through and commitment isn't the same as somebody who says, oh, I had to interview to get that slot. Like I had to beat people out to get to have my internship at that clinic, right? It raises the stakes, it elevates the game, and thereby increases the value of your practice's brand and culture. So well done to you, Jason, for figuring that out.
You have to think of it more as like a fellowship, even though it's your clinical education. It's treated more like a fellowship where it's I think that's a good word. Where it's a privilege to kind of be picked to come here, and they all know that, and the schools talk about it. So we already get the best of the best in our minds based on the interview, based on who's qualified, based on how high on the list they have to be in order to be able to choose CEP physical therapy. So we've really developed a center of excellence for getting students exposed to our brand and who's going to be the best options usually. I mean, we hire people that aren't interns, and we've hired many of those as well. But I'll give you an example. My COO, Stephanie, she was one of my first interns 13 years ago. She just had her 13-year anniversary with me, and now she's my
Wow.
COO.
Congratulations.
My director of clinical operations, his name's Brock. He's only been with us for 3 years, but he's now our director of clinical operations. He's actually a person, and this is something else that you teach. Like, he finished his clinical, seemed like he was a real go-getter, but we didn't have a position available. And I tell every person that's qualified, I always interview every person that's qualified, whether we have a job or not for them
Yeah.
currently. And
And
I
that's
told Brock,
something we need to stop on right there. So many PT owners out there, many of you who are listening may think I'm only going to put out ads and go through the interview process and go through the recruiting, jumping those hoops when I have an opening or when I have an opening. No, you should be recruiting and running the ad all the time, whether you have an opening or not. And Jason's about to share with you why.
yeah. So I've done this, for 20 years of having my practice. Anybody that's highly qualified and we think they'd have the good ethos, the good mindset for our practice, I tell them, hey, create a job for yourself. Brock's the first one that ever said, I really want to work here. I'm going to create a job for myself. So we started him on a kind of a per diem part-time. And by the end of his first month, he had a full schedule. He created a job for himself.
That's
And
awesome.
so you get those people that you've
Yeah.
basically gone through a 3-month interview process anyway. They're a good candidate. We just had, just 2 months ago, we had 2 openings for DPTs. And we had 5 or 6 people that were candidates that I don't want to say were begging to work here, but they all would have accepted a position. And we don't pay top dollar as a base pay. That's another thing we could talk about. We have a pay for performance model. I've never once lost a person that I wanted to hire because the base pay was lower than probably anywhere else that they could possibly work. And people's minds are probably like blown right now, right? Like, what? Like, how do you do that? But
Yeah, and that's an important piece too, because the key words were I've never lost hiring a person that I wanted to hire, that you wanted to hire, not that knocked on your door that wanted to come. Not everybody who answers your ad or sends something in is someone you should hire, right? You have to realize it's a private golf course. This isn't a public course where anybody who wants to get here can walk on. And the pay for performance model truly weeds out, in my mind, which I'm so glad you're applying it, Jason. We're going to talk more about that strategy because I think that's a very influential piece. In my mind, not only does it help balance out your income expense ratio, not only does it help with your payroll as a percent of GI, which are 2 very valuable statistics that everyone should be running in their clinic on a monthly basis. Their payroll as a percent of GI and their income to expense ratios. They should be running those on a regular basis. Not only does it handle that from a business side, but it handles it from a personnel side, because aren't you only hiring and attracting and retaining the go-getters of the flock? You're not just getting somebody who wants to get paid just for being here or just for having a license and a heartbeat.
Yeah, we always want to hire what we call the right person, but not the right now person, right? And I
Right.
understand the job market out there, but literally, like, I would be happy to talk to any one of your listeners about how do we get this clinical education program started? What's step 1? What's step 2? What's step 3? How do you make it super simple? Like the first 2 weeks when they come in, they just shadow. We made it a point to just shadow your clinical instructor. Then they start helping us write notes to make sure they understand the documentation. Then when patients get comfortable with them, so it's not a burden. It's like they teach you as well as we mentor them. So it really makes it super easy. But it's what was the question as far as the pay for performance?
Yeah, well, that's the second strategy. I think once people come in and they understand that what does a new grad want based on survey when they first get out of school and they take their first job? They want to learn. They're still in learning mode. They still want to be mentored. They want to grow and develop, but at the same time, they want a level of autonomy. So when you're putting them through their paces to become a CI, you're putting them through, their mentorship program. They're getting exactly what they want when they come out of school. That is such a great strategy. The fact that you're always hiring and you're always out there looking for the best and the brightest is the second strategy we touched on, which I think is well played. And the one that I think is most influential for your company culture and your company growth and expansion and quality quality of patient outcomes is pay for performance. Pay
Yeah.
for performance, I think, will handle the quality. I think it'll handle the productivity. I think it'll handle the income expense ratio, and it'll definitely work against the income squeeze that so many people are experiencing out there. How has the pay for performance model really changed things for you? Because like you said, Jason, people are getting a lower base pay than they would if they're going salary and benefits down the street, but yet they want to work for you and not down the street.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. So the way it's presented is this is going to be your base pay, which is definitely at the lowest end of what somebody would make as an outpatient first year physical therapist. But for us, doesn't matter if you're a staff level clinician, doesn't matter if you have 1 year or 10 years. If you want to be a career 10-year clinician, that's all you want to do. You want to be a producer, you want to do treatment, they're going to have the same base pay as the new grad. So if you want to move up in ranks, you kind of increase in pay, but the base pay is definitely lower than what they could get down the street. But the way it's presented, it could either be presented in two ways. It could be presented as, hey, I'm not going to pay you that much. You're going to have to earn your keep. That's one message. If I did that, I wouldn't hire anybody, right? Or it's like, hey, you're going to be new. We want you to really get used to being, in our clinic. We want you to get used to our patients, the way we do things, the technology we utilize. We don't want you to be stressed out being required to see, 50 to 55 patients a week, until you're comfortable. So we're going to start at this base pay. And the way we, set our base pay is it should be about a third. They should generate about 3 times of what their base pay is. So that's the formula that we use. A third goes to reinvesting in your clinic. And if you go to any of our clinics, you could see that we always reinvest all that money back into our clinics. That's one thing you have to do with equipment, with training, with education. And the other third goes to benefits and, things like that. So that's what their base pay is based on. Let's just say it's 60 grand. And the way our system is set up, if a new grad and that's to see 40 patients a week, we're happy if they see 40 patients a week, paying them, let's say 60 grand. We're happy with that. I don't start looking at the schedule and get upset because, I'm paying and they're not coming in or they're not getting good results.
Right.
Under our system, and we outline this in a status sheet, the status sheets that MEG teaches us to do upon employment. It's not a contract. It's just, this is what we're going to exchange. We're going to give you this, you're going to get that, right?
It's a written, agreed upon understanding of what I'm giving to you and what you're giving to me, what I'm expected to perform and produce for you, and what you're expecting to perform and produce in return for my production. It is a two-way street. A status sheet is not an employment letter. It is not a legal binding agreement, but it is definitely a written understanding of how we're going to collaborate, work together in 2 professional standards. If you're not hiring people with status sheets, you are definitely 1985.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in transparency, right? One of the things that I follow is Chris McChesney, 4 Disciplines of Execution. We have our WIG meeting every Wednesday, which is a whole nother topic. But,
nice.
But we are very transparent and we're very simple. Execution, like simplicity and transparency, right? So even with our new hires, I just hired one from University of Florida. He was in the Navy for 8 years as a corpsman, and he was one of 6 candidates, and we hired 2. He was one of them. But we let them know, like, if you were just to see 45 patients, so your base pay, or even exchange, and we're both okay with it as you're getting used to it, is 40 patients a week for your base pay. Under our formula, if he just sees 45 patients and hits all of his bonuses by seeing 45 patients a week on average over the course of a year, he's going to be making $80,000 in his first year. So what we tell him is, you're not going to be forced to see a ton of volume until you're super comfortable, you're continually refining your professional skills. But if you just see a little bit over the bare minimum, like, who in outpatient isn't seeing a minimum of 45 patients? Is a new grad making 80 grand everywhere because, seeing 45 patients? No. So they're really what you termed intrapreneurs, right? They could be as busy as they want. If they see 50 patients a week, they end up making 90. If they see 55, they make 100 grand in their first year, which is not unheard of in on any of these other clinics out there. But it's also the way our business model is set up with a hybrid practice. It all ties into everything, but like, it starts with the clinical education program. They get the best candidates. And then like this one that I was just telling you about, he wasn't an intern of ours. He found us through social media, saying he really liked what we stand for based on what he saw on social media and on the internet. So it's also important to have that out there and have like a progressive looking clinic to what the general public can see when they do a Google search, right? So we're jumping around a little bit. But...
So you got it working both externally and internally. You're attractive internally to your, clinical education students who want to just stay and be part of that culture, but you're also attractive to the outside market who's looking in saying, hey, I want to be a part of that. what I do think people are asking themselves right now, listening to you, Jason, with those numbers is, well, what's the average reimbursement in that market or for those clinics, number one? And what's the schedule look like? Is it 1 an hour? Is it 2 an hour? One every 40, one every 45? Because those are really the way to go. Every patient should be in your clinic 55 to 65 minutes, but how frequently are they walking in that door? Is it every 40, every 45, or every hour? Really? And if they're,
For
which
us,
is
it's
every
an
hour or
hour.
every
Yeah,
30 too,
yeah, for
on the
my
30s.
clinic specifically, it's every hour. We're a
Yeah.
hybrid practice, so we only take the
Yeah.
higher paying, but it's easy to scale that equation. Maybe the base number of patients for a base amount of pay is 45 patients, or maybe it's
Sure.
50, and then you can do that. So you can always scale that based on whatever the model is. But
Yeah.
it brings us to we're set up as a hybrid practice. We take Medicare, we take TRICARE, everything else is out of network, or else it's cash.
Mhm.
And so, but we're opening up kind of a Pandora's box now, because if you don't have 8 clinicians that could get really good results on the first or second
That's right.
visit, you're not going to be able to have 8 clinician schedules full with the highest paying, customers that are most invested from a cost standpoint in your practice. Adding things like the newbie and
Yeah.
PEMF and HRV, which is what we also teach through New PT Tech, creates those clinicians from the very beginning. So it's a whole thing. But you don't, whatever your practice model is, it will not be hard to get qualified candidates if you have a decent company culture, if you're investing in your practice, and if you have interns that like your practice. Like I said, we had five or six really qualified candidates for 2 positions a couple months ago, and I don't think that's unheard of. But all the practices I talked to, none of them have a good clinical education program.
Right, right. And then people who are listening saying, well, I'm not out of network and doing all cash. I'm 80% or 85% all in network. And I do take some cash, and I do some out of network work on some of the lower payers for 15% of my money. So here's my advice to you guys. Number one, your target goal should be to be bringing 20% of your annual revenue through cash-based services, as much as you possibly can, because you actually have to be appealing to both your insurers and your covered insured patients in your community, so that your referring physicians and your employers and everybody in the area are comfortable sending to you, because you're going to accept that insurance. But that you have the backbone and the spine to cut off the low paying insurances that you're just not going to accept, because they're just taking advantage of the profession. They're taking advantage of the income, the premiums that are coming into them. They're getting rich and everybody else is suffering, and they don't care. We know that that's what it is when you have an insurance company willing to pay $35 for a physical therapy session, or the one I learned about up in Maryland that was willing to pay $17 per physical therapy session, flat pay. It's insulting. Okay, that's just outright insulting. So make yourself available to take cash. Make yourself in network with everybody who, in my opinion, just as a general rule of thumb, I like to have payers that are paying me $20 more than what it costs for me to deliver that service. So if you know what it costs for you to deliver the service, all in costs, your salary costs, your benefit costs, your indirect operating costs, all in costs, if that comes out to be, $53 a session, a visit cost for that therapy session, then you should be accepting insurances that are going to pay you 73 or greater. Right. I wouldn't accept anything less than that $20 spread. So I just wanted to give some how-tos, wanted to give you a plug and play technology or food for thought, so that you guys aren't just hearing this theoretically, you're actually hearing like how we make the sauce. Right. And that's one of the things I would want to
And
share.
that's one of the things that you've preached from the very beginning with MEG Academy is, know your metrics. You have to know what you can afford, and you have to develop your business model around you're hiring around your business model around who you can afford, and then make it all seem like really good to attract the best candidates. There's a lot going on there that MEG Academy teaches, but if, like, the ones that are listening, if you can't rattle off your net revenue per visit, your net cost per visit right now, and you don't know what that was for the past 4 quarters, you have no idea on who you can even afford. I've had clinics out in the Southwest, part of the country that they said, hey, I'm going to hire somebody. I want to pay this much an hour per diem. I'm like, well, that's way too much. Where'd you come up with that number? Well, that's just what I hear people are paying. I have another clinic I'm working with in the Northeast their net cost per visit is like $30 more than their net revenue per visit. I'm like, how have you been in business for 20 years?
Yeah.
And so it's got to start with, and that's where the pay for performance model really works. Your base pay is what you know is for doing a base level of work, but enough work to keep your job because you're the right person for the job. Maybe you don't want to be a huge producer, but you find out really quick who those producers are. Another really important thing to talk about with a pay for performance model is one of the most annoying things as a practice owner or as a manager is when one of your staff level clinicians has a cancellation and they're like, oh, good, I have time to do my notes. Like that
Right.
cancellation is non-revenue. We had another patient that wanted that spot, and then enforcing the cancellation policy with your front desk. But in a pay for performance model, as soon as that patient cancels, those therapists are looking at the phone, looking at other patients. That could be what you call cluster booking at MEG Academy, I think it's still
Yep.
called.
Yep.
But they're looking to fill that position. They're not saying, good, I have time to write my notes, because they know their minimum exchange in my practice is 40 patients. And if they get to 45, they're going to be making 20 grand more a year than what they are for their base pay. And they're also, it's important to get that good report, that promoter score too. We look at those as well, that we utilize from a satisfaction standpoint. So we're not giving up like quality or patient satisfaction by saying see more patients. I think 45
Yeah.
patients a week is like a dream for most physical therapists.
It is a dream. And most people are trying to wrap their wits around this conversation, and they're saying, well, I'm so familiar with the shared risk model. And the shared risk model is the essence between anybody using the shared risk model instead of pay for performance, which we've only talked pay for performance going back 6 years when we designed this, was that shared risk models reward the person on two things: higher income generation or higher patient volume. So the therapist realizes, if I'm going to come work for you and you have a shared risk model, you're going to either make me run on this treadmill faster, I got to see more people, or you're going to be tying it to my units. I got to bill out, in their mind, they're billing, which physical therapists don't bill, but I'm going to have to put down more units, because the more money I make for the business, the more money they're going to share with me. Pay for performance model is not in that wheelhouse at all. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about why you became a therapist. There's three main things that every physical therapist does. They are mainly focused on, I want to help as many people in my community live a better life. That's clinical efficiency. How many people can you help in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a month? The more people you're able to help, more time efficient you are, the better clinician you are. Second, how much care can I give per session? That's called production, productivity. How productive am I in that session? Am I a gabby goose and I'm just gabbing about the Tampa Bay Bucks all day, or I'm actually engaging my patient and actually working with them and actually exchanging an abundance with them? They came in, they got 4 units of care, 3.75 units of care. It's not like I'm in here trying to get every patient in here and waste their time for 55, 65 minutes and deliver 2.5 units of care. Like, no therapist would stick around in employment with me if that's what they're doing. And then the third key element is quality. What does the patient say about the experience they're having? To me, that's the most important thing. Yes, I can look at my outcome, short-term goals, long-term goals met for sure. Clinically, I want to look at goals met for sure. But what's even more important to me is what the patient thinks. And that net promoter score is one question. How do you feel if care is needed? Would you come back again if care is needed, or would you refer a friend or family member to our clinic? Give that to us on a 0 to 10 scale. Anything 9 or above is acceptable. 8 is questionable to me. So, you really want that 8 or above kind of scorecard. So now I'm running a pay for performance model based on quality, efficiency, and productivity. And that's how I'm exchanging with them. I love, Jason, that you've tied numbers to that base salary and then numbers going up the scale in terms of how well they can do. I like scoring those three. You get an X bonus bucket, money put in your bonus bucket for clinical efficiency at this level, this level, this level. You get X money you've earned at productivity at this level, this level, and this level, and quality at this level, this level. So I'm not saying you got to run really fast on the treadmill, and I'm not saying you got to be, throwing the kitchen sink at everybody every time. I'm saying you have to have a well-rounded, balanced approach between quality, productivity, and efficiency. And those are the therapists that are going to do the best in that model.
And that promoter score, like when I do an interview, I'm thinking, is this person going to get a 9 or a 10 on every net promoter score? Because it's not really like how good a therapist you are clinically. It's like, how much does the patient like you? Like, one of my professors, one of the only things I remember from PT school in 1992 at University of Florida, I remember some stuff. Yeah, obviously I'm a PT. But the one thing that sticks with me is the one clinician, so the teacher said, if a patient will never sue you if they like you, you could accidentally break their leg while they're on the BAPS board, then
Yeah.
they will never sue you. But if they dislike you, you have a good chance of being sued. But that's a net promoter score, not necessarily about, I mean, I'm being exaggerating about lawsuits, but like we expect a 9 or a 10. If it's not a 9 or a 10, like one person got an 8 last week, and you thought there was a 5-alarm fire with distraught across the entire company
Yeah.
when we knew there was an 8 out of 10 in net promoter score. So that has to do with company culture and the people
Right.
you recruit, people you develop, the people you maintain. We also have a staff professional development program. Every quarter we do something different. A lot of times it's like doing clinical data collection, whether it's on the newbie or heart rate variability or some other new technique that we're trying. And we collect actual clinical trial data on patients and, see what interventions work the best, and we pass those on to our customers across the country. But professional development is also something that it's kind of like, okay, it's one extra thing that the staff has to do every quarter, but they want that ability to kind of be part of something bigger than just treating patients. So that's another thing that they understand, and that helps with recruiting. Like I have a sheet of paper here that has I had Stephanie copy some of the cover letters of the 5 or 6 resumes we just had for two job openings. And one person that found us on the internet from out of the state, was relocating to Clearwater, Florida, found us on the internet. And she said she wants to learn, refine her clinical skills, but also have autonomy with decision making and have an opportunity. Think about all those key words, right? Nobody, it was never once about money. And this person was offered, if this person was hired, and the money had no bearing on whether or not she was going to accept the position or not, or whether we were going to hire her. So it's all those things, that you always talk about, but in practical sense, it's very, very rarely about the money. The only time it becomes part of the money is if your company culture is bad, and that's a reason for leaving, because, well, I can make $2 more down the street. But it never was about the money originally. It became an excuse to leave because all those programs that help support and develop and maintain and have a good company culture maybe weren't there. So
Yeah, and the surveys pan that out, right? Survey data suggests that staff retention is most highly connected to um, uh, job satisfaction based on, do I feel validated as a performer for the clinical skills that I have? Am I validated in my clinical knowledge and ability to apply that, which is skill development, which you're talking about? And do I feel acknowledged by the people I work with for who I am as a person? Am I acknowledged for being a decent human being? And do I run in a pack of other decent human beings? Do I love my coworkers? Do I like the people I work with? Are we in a collaborative, sharing, caring environment or not? And number 2, am I validated and seen? Am I seen? Am I relevant as a clinician here in this practice? Which is why I'm so keen on the progressive PT practice model, because the owner and the clinical director is only really focusing now on clinical staff development, skill development. You don't have to worry about any admin responsibilities. Well, you do, but you don't have to handle the personnel side of it. So that makes all the difference in the world. Jason, you're definitely hitting home runs on that.
Yeah, it's much easier when you can get out of your whirlwind and not have to worry about all the other stuff. Like, what clinic owner is going to focus necessarily on professional development and do it like we do it, with something different every 3 months, if you're worried about payroll and hiring that front desk and continually retraining it? I mean, we both talk to that practice owner all the time, right? They're just overwhelmed. And so you can't really develop a clinic that, new clinicians are going to want to work in and grow and stay for 13 years like Stephanie has, if you don't have the tools that like Meg teaches to get out of your own way. And now, we're talking about the progressive model, even to a much greater extent, of take that completely off your plate and just worry about continual staff training, staff development, making it a good, like, I'll give you one other quick example, pro tip. And I don't know, like hopefully the compliance police don't get me on this one, but with our expectation of 40 patients per week as a base level exchange, if somebody wants to take off a Monday, this just happened, but they see 32 patients the rest of the week, guess what? They don't have to, they don't, if they still see 40 in the other 4 days, they don't have to take a paid day off because they've already seen their 40 in that other day. So it gives them the autonomy of arranging their schedule. Now, we don't want somebody saying, I'm never coming in again on a Monday. because I could see all my patients,
Yeah.
Tuesday through Thursday. There is a schedule, but if it comes up, we kind of give them credit, paying it forward for the paid hours off based on the number of patients they see in that, Sunday through Saturday anyway. So it's another way to kind of say, hey, we're not going to nickel and dime. Yeah, you're a professional. You should
Yeah.
be able to create your schedule within a certain amount of guidelines, and see the patients and get good quality care and, get enough, coming in for the clinic to stay open, to kind of
Yeah.
continue to reinvest. But you have more or less autonomy. We schedule every hour, but if it's ethical, legal, and legitimate to schedule and double patients up, my therapists have the opportunity to double patients up if they can pass through all those loopholes. So we don't
Sure.
dictate, turn them into text, but they
Sure.
really have a lot more autonomy with us, I think, than they have in the traditional physical therapy model, which also is a big thing for keeping job satisfaction.
Absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to be micromanaged. Everybody wants to be in an environment that they can practice as a professional and they can have some degree of autonomy over their schedule and over their patient care. I think that's a really important cultural aspect for sure. But I think where people lack confidence and certainty, they overcompensate through micromanagement because they're not really confident and sure of the statistics, of the key performance indicators, of the company metrics that they should be running and how to actually get that performance from their people. They then just swoop in and they feel like they got to be like right over the top of everything. So if you feel like that, you're running your practice, you feel like it doesn't go right if your eyes aren't on it or your hands aren't on it, then you have a bigger problem in management. You have a bigger problem in management. It's probably not your staff as much as you're blaming them. It's probably more how you're approaching them and how you're not giving them the ability to step up and be that autonomous character within your practice. We talked a lot about pay for performance. Some other key things here, Jason, that I think are attractive on the recruitment side is a tuition reimbursement program. What do you do in that area? How do you handle that?
Well, I never even thought of that until you mentioned it probably 6 months ago on one of your podcasts.
Ah,
So, but here's the thing, again, you have to be motivated and you have to be intentional. When you hear something, like you hear you talk, or I listen to Darren Daly, Darren Hardy talk, or,
no, I love
listen
Darren
to
Hardy. Yeah.
Chris McChesney talk, or whoever,
Yeah.
listening to it because you feel like you're working while you're on the treadmill and it goes in one ear out the other. Like yesterday morning when I was early running on the treadmill, and again I have a squirrel moment. Remind me what we were talking about, because this applies to it, but I'll probably forget. But I was running on the treadmill and I was listening to a chapter of a book listening to now, which is called Illusion of Choice. By the way, I highly recommend it. It's about branding and how people think about your brand and things and making decisions and marketing and stuff like that. But I shut the treadmill off and put it in cool down mode 4 times because I'm listening to this book, but I'm going into my notes trying to create notes while I'm running.
Oh, I do
I
that.
kept hitting the button by accident. But my point is, if you're not intentional, you hear about a good idea, I think you mentioned like you could do up to $5,600, whatever it was. Everybody, I think you said, should be considering a tuition reimbursement, because it's basically tax free when it comes to income and coming in, coming out. I think it's
Sure.
$5,600. And
Tax
so
write-off.
we looked into it. I talked to my attorney. She wrote up a policy on tuition reimbursement, so it's compliant. And now everybody who qualifies gets tuition reimbursement every other paycheck, and they love it. It's like it's basically a benefit that just shows that you're listening to, I guess, the elephant in the room, where they got these huge bills, and you don't necessarily need to include that in a huge salary that you pay them for, whether they see enough patients that you're paying them for that salary or not. Make it to where they have a choice. They could be relatively slow at 40 patients per week. By doing that, they get tuition reimbursement, they get all these other opportunity, but they have the opportunity to make up to 100 grand a year in their first year if they just see as many patients as they did, working for, I don't want to name any of the corporate places, but pick any of the corporate physical therapy places that still probably see 60 patients a week, right? So the tuition reimbursement is one other thing that's like, wow, you guys do that, nobody else does that. That's going to be a huge benefit to us. And it really works out from both ends, as opposed to just paying that in salary, whether you do the work or not. So
yeah, no, that's perfect, man. That is a perfect strategy right there. Letting people know that you're appreciative and you're willing to invest in their education. You're willing to help offset some of their monthly payments for that education that they've taken. So look, I think we've covered a lot of good things. I think on the way out the door here, we should mention that over the years, and Jason and I have been doing this for several decades, and over the several decades, HR, personnel upsets, personnel drama, accusations, employment firings and suits and discrimination and anything else you want to say after watching the news for a week, you could pretty much count on can pop its ugly head up in your clinic these days. I can say my first 2 decades of work that this stuff was non-existent. Everybody came honest day for an honest dollar. Nobody was out there to get anybody. Nobody was taking advantage of situations. Now I've got owners calling me up and saying, yeah, Brian, I got employees who come here, work, decent job for 6 months. Then they goof off and they mess around. And they hope to get fired so that they can sit back and collect unemployment for a year. And then they start the cycle all over again. I mean, all these malicious kind of things that we see out there, all these ugly things, or you try to hold somebody accountable for not doing their job, and then they claim discrimination or they claim something. And you're like, what are you talking about? We're the same race. We're the same. Like, what is this? What is this all about? I'm holding you accountable to not doing your job so that you can do a better job. And I'm trying to put you on a employee, improvement program, which is what we teach in MEG. We say when somebody's deficient, you put them on an employee improvement program and give them a period of time to show that they can turn it around. But all of these crazy, nonsensical things are being thrown around out there. I know what we've done as a company that's helped us a lot. But Jason, what have you discovered? What have you been looking at or hearing about that you can share with the audience so that people can, start protecting themselves a little bit more and be more fair and balanced on both sides? I'm not saying that everybody's innocent on one side and everybody's guilty on another. I just think that people are people. Society has shifted under our feet. And I think we need to walk right down the center of the highway, being fair and balanced to both parties so that we don't have to entertain these kinds of lawsuits and employment suits.
Yeah, HR is a big thing, right? You have to be compliant with it. And I'll just say, for any of the listeners that own a PT practice, if you're still having people fill out a paper employment application and you file those, I mean, we've done it up until recently, you file those in a folder with your name on it, you're probably not up to speed with compliance, up to speed with somebody that knows what they're doing. So I was just introduced recently to an organization called a PEO. I believe it's Professional Employment Organization. And for us, it's about, as a small business, we still only have 12 employees, and trying to get really good commercial health insurance for our employees is a challenge. So, we looked at a PEO just for that. But basically what you do is they handle everything from your hiring forms to your compliance to if somebody, is laid off or quits, they handle all that stuff. But we were able to get a quote on really like Fortune 500, like Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance, or would name any of the big carriers, but we were able to get a quote for insurance that's less than what each employee is paying out of pocket now, just by looking at a PEO. And so we're looking at starting in the next couple of weeks of probably hiring them to handle all of our HR, and it basically comes down to the cost of probably a 0.4 FTE for the people that are already handling all of our HR stuff. There's 12 people that have 12 different hats handling different HR things and handling resumes and things like that. So we're just looking at it. I don't know enough about it yet, but on the surface, just like you're talking about the progressive PT practice where you get virtual front desk and have MEG handle all the front office and back office and all that stuff and billing. I think it's, when you look at the price and you think about what you have to do and what you have to train and what you have to do to continually revise that when you get somebody new in there, if nothing else other than looking at better health insurance benefits, and that's going to be a big thing as a small company that really attracts employees when you want to hire them as well, is being able to offer all those benefits and looking and operating like a Fortune 500 company when we only have 12 people. So
right. That's really important. Yeah. For us, we've got 90 employees in 33 different states, I think is where we're at right now. And we're helping practices on all levels, everything from finance to operations to startups to 44 clinics. And how do I go to 54 clinics? We've got every type of audience, every type of owner. And the thing is to give the education, give the materials, handouts, methods, processes, strategies, programs, policies to succeed, but then to actually apply in a way that you're protected, apply in a way that's committed, that's comprehensive and consistent. Consistency. I see people start things, stop things, start things, stop things, because they want to do the next bright thing. Part of that, when you grow to that level and you're starting to do that, you need to get stuff off your plate. You need to get stuff in the hands of professionals so that you can get down to the business of focusing on your business, focusing on what you know best. Every physical therapist who's in private practice is the best at therapy. So the progressive PT model says outsource your billing, outsource your social media marketing, outsource your front desk receptionist, outsource your insurance verification officer. For those of you who want to learn more about that, go to PPS, come to our booth. We will show you, demo you, and all that. Because people are telling me, meaning owners, practice owners, physical therapists like you listeners, are saying more people, more problems. If you truly believe more people, more problems, then put in the hands of the experts all of those admin functions, your credentialing, your front desk, your insurance verification officer, your billing officer, so that you can focus on exactly what Jason and I were talking about, the clinical relevance, the clinical enhancement, the clinical development for greater patient outcomes and greater patient experiences and a better, bigger brand, right? What we're doing is we're offering those services for everybody. And in order for us to do that, we had to get stuff off our plate. So we brought Paychex in. Paychex is now running the benefits. They're running the HR. They're running the payroll. They're running the taxes. They're dealing with all the different taxes in all these different states that we're in. It's been a godsend for us because now we can get to focus on you. We can focus on you, the client, the customer, where you are and what state you're in and what your needs are for you to succeed. So please do the same thing in your practice is what I'm saying. I'm not just preaching something to you that I'm not practicing myself. I'm practicing what I preach as well. And I believe the new model is not the fee-for-service model. The only way you succeed is more patients, more billing, more patients, more units. That is 1950s. You really should look like the modern day hair salon where the person is just focusing on doing your hair. There's nobody else at the front sweeping. There's nobody doing the mirrors. There's nobody signing you in. It's just clinical delivery. That's where I think your practice model should be. Jason's a shining example of that. Jason, is it okay if I offer to anybody who wants to learn more? They can go to the links below. They can connect to you. Rachel will put something in the links. I want people to reach in and have a practice assessment, talk to Jason, talk to myself. I'm happy to do a practice assessment with you. Let's find out where your pain points are, where your pressure is, where you feel you're coming up short, and let's talk about what you can do about it. Whether you work with us or not, at least we can get you in the right direction. Are you okay with that?
Awesome. Yeah, happy to talk to anybody, even if it's just, hey, I've been thinking about doing a clinical education program. Tell me, how do you even get started with that? And can you kind of help me with that? It's for sure. Another good book I'm reading now is called Buy Back Your Time. Just kind of plug that really quick. But what you just said is like, if you're, let's just say you want to make 100 grand as a physical therapist, that means you're getting paid $50 and you're making $50 an hour. As an owner, let's say you want to make 100 grand, you're getting $50 an hour. If you can hire somebody to do like tasks such as bookkeeping for less than a third of what your desired pay is, then you're crazy. You're wasting your time and still doing your own bookkeeping, right? So that's just kind of what you hinted on. So, but absolutely, I'd be happy to talk to anybody about any of the things that MEG teaches that I'm either like really super coachable or just I kind of follow it blindly. But every direction that MEG has ever led me in that I've executed has been successful. So if you want to know practically how does this work in the whirlwind, I mean, when Brian met me, my practice was well known, but we were a mess. I mean, we were one of those practices where our net revenue per visit was $30 more than our net cost was $30 more than our net revenue. And so yeah, if you just listen and you execute the things that they're teaching, it will be helpful. And if you want a practical impression of how I've done a lot of those things, reach out to me. It's not going to cost you anything. This is what I spend most of my time doing now.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. There's no money involved here. Nobody's getting paid on this. Just reach into, MEG Business Management, and you can have a PA call with myself or Laura. We can connect you with Jason. Jason's great because he's a great student. He's a great example of leader and a practice owner and manager because he doesn't get in his own way. He's like, I see where I'm coming up short here. I see where I'm strong there. Give me the time, tools, energy, and knowledge to actually excel in that area, and I'll apply it. So when you're a go-getter, nothing can stop you. But it's up to you, right? The grass isn't going to cut itself. If you really want to make a change in your lawn, you got to get out there and cut it. You got to get out there and weed it. What are you willing to do? If you're willing to make a change and you're willing to look at yourself and say, I'm an imperfect human being, but I can be better, then go connect yourself with a group, whether it's ours or some other group that's going to assist you in becoming better, not just better in your head, not just better in what you know and what you can think with, but better in your application of what you've learned and what you know and you think with. I love the fact that Jason's dropped some books. We'll put those books in the description so you can link to those. You probably get them on Amazon. So that's it for everybody. Sorry, this went a little longer than normal. Jason, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy, but you are the real deal, and people should hear you as a reference so they take great confidence in moving forward themselves. So thank you again for coming on.
Appreciate the opportunity to help.
Yeah, thank you, man. All right, everybody. So that's it for this week. Stay tuned. Look for us at PPS. We are going to have a big social. We're having a great outing. We're going to have New Fit. We're going to have Virtual Sally, PT United. They're all being sponsored at our social event in the evening. Ping pong tables, good fun. Check it out. Look us up. PPS is awesome. I'm not taking anything away from that. You got to attend that event. If you've never gone, you absolutely have to go. And then surely come to our social in the evening when the booths all shut down and the lecture halls are all closed. Come learn from other owners just like yourself how they're doing it. That's what it's all about. So as always, everybody, start each and every day expecting to do well.